Brad Gerstner, investidor e fundador da Altimeter Capital, uma gestora de fundos com mais de 17,9 bilhões investidos, dá sua visão sobre o futuro do mercado, pontuando que a inflação e os juros são menos relevantes do que o nível de incerteza no mundo.
We now are going to have a couple inflation prints coming up over the course of the next couple weeks that are going to be important. My hunch is, everybody has tilted again on, what we saw in the last couple prints. My suspicion, if you look at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, the consensus view is that we're still heading in the direction of 4% faster than I think people emotionally think. So I would say there's maximum uncertainty in the world. The fear that inflation is uncapped, the way Larry Summers was articulating in November and December, is less today than it was. But what's emerged is this idea that we're going to have higher rates for longer and we're going to have higher inflation for longer. Now, the question I'd throw back at you is the market abhors uncertainty. The market's done totally fine during periods where we had 3% inflation and 5.5% rates, right? When the internet boom that was, 2000 to 2005, rates were a hell of a lot higher than the rates are today. So I don't think that higher rates and higher inflation means that we can't, invest in venture-backed companies that have huge secular growth.
The world doesn't end.
But what I do think it means is if there's massive uncertainty in the world, if allocators of capital don't know whether rates are going to double again, whether inflation's going to double again, then everything just shuts down. And that's really bad for the economy. I don't see that happening right now, but I do think that the prints over the course of the next 8 weeks are going to be important.
Lembrando que em março temos 4 datas importantes para acompanhar. A primeira é dia 10 de março, que é quando o relatório de emprego é liberado e também o dia em que os credores lesados pela Mt. Gox vão finalmente receber seus bitcoins, o que pode gerar uma pressão vendedora no mercado. Em seguida, 14 e 15 de março é quando o CPI e o PPI saem e vão mostrar como a inflação está no país. Se a inflação ainda estiver subindo, não será uma boa notícia. Já a última data é dia 22, que é quando o Fed se reúne e decide o quanto vão subir de juros. A previsão é que suba mais 25 pontos base. Caso suba 50 pontos, que é o que alguns especulam, podemos ver sangue. Tether ataca o Wall Street Journal por alegações equivocadas de documentos falsificados para contas bancárias. A Tether revidou um relatório da Wall Street Journal detalhando supostas transações obscuras utilizando a Bitfinex para abrir contas bancárias. A empresa por trás do stablecoin Tether respondeu a um relatório do The Wall Street Journal alegando ter vínculos com entidades que falsificaram documentos e usaram empresas de fachada para manter o acesso ao sistema bancário. Em 3 de março, o jornal relatou em documentos e e-mails vazados que as entidades vinculadas a Tether e a sua irmã Bitfinex falsificaram faturas e transações de vendas e se esconderam atrás de terceiros para abrir contas bancárias que, em outro caso, não poderiam ter sido abertas. Nesse mesmo dia, a Tether chamou as conclusões do relatório de alegações obsoletas de muito tempo atrás e totalmente imprecisas e enganosas, acrescentando: a Bitfinex e a Tether possuem programas de conformidade de classe mundial e aderem aos requisitos legais aplicáveis de combate à lavagem de dinheiro, KYC e requerimentos antiterroristas de financiamento. Depois de mais de 2 anos, Brad Garlinghouse, CEO da Ripple, espera uma decisão no processo da SEC em breve. Ele fala na TV Bloomberg sobre a necessidade de abraçar as regulações nos Estados Unidos.
SEC bringing the case against Ripple was not really just a case about Ripple or about XRP. It's really about the industry and how the SEC is kind of playing offense and attacking the whole industry. 2.5 years ago when this started, I'm not sure everyone fully digested that, and now that is widely understood. This is going to be pivotal for the whole industry because if the SEC is able to prevail, I think there's a lot of other cases, and some of them just in the last 4 weeks, I think they brought 5 additional enforcement cases. The macro headline for me is this is not a healthy way to regulate an industry. Regulation through enforcement, as opposed to where we're seeing in other countries where they're doing the work, right? They're codifying, they're creating a framework that allows an industry to grow while protecting consumers. And I think that's really what the U.S. is lagging. And just under why I'm here in Washington is to continue to try to evangelize and educate. Here's how these technologies can really benefit consumers, benefit industry.
Is what I'm hearing from you essentially, if the U.S. doesn't get its act together and move more quickly,
all of this is going offshore. It's just going elsewhere.
Well, it already is. I mean, the sad reality is that the U.S. really is already behind. You know, this is not behind countries that we haven't necessarily heard of. This is behind Australia and behind the UK, Japan, Singapore, Switzerland. There's a lot of countries that have taken the time and thoughtfulness to create that clear rules of the road. By contrast, when I first got involved in the tech industry in the late 90s, some were saying the internet should be banned. They were saying, like, here's how the internet is being used for illicit purposes. But the US government said, no, we're going to create a framework. And that allowed entrepreneurs, that allowed investors to come in and look at the benefits to the United States on a geopolitical basis to have the Amazons and Googles based and headquartered in the United States. We're at, I think, severe risk of having that not happen in this next evolution of technology around blockchain and crypto. It has already started moving outside the United States. And also, the consumers are suffering because of that, because you don't have the same protections that the U.S. regulatory frameworks can provide.
What would a good framework look like, in your view?
Well, look, I think what you're seeing right now is the Securities and Exchange Commission. You know, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And not everything here is a nail. And I think any framework has to start with clear protections for consumers, but then to thoughtfully understand that these aren't always going to be securities. Some of them are used as currencies. That is, having an efficient process to trade, exchange, move those things would be much harder in a world if they were regulated as securities.
E por hoje é isso, pessoal. Deixa o like, se inscreve, comenta, compartilha e a gente se vê no próximo. Valeu!
だがなおとはたとえどんなことがあっても自分が軌道経理基盤であると名乗ることはできないのだ。